Alright guys, welcome back. It's been a minute since we've been here, but let's talk a little bit about lineups. Not haircuts, which I clearly do need one, but Canada's playing Qatar and Uruguay, and they have some questions as to how they want to split up the squad, play both matches, and see what goes. If you're new to the channel, guys, we do primarily Canadian African content, you know the deal, trying to get 1,000, blah blah blah. Let's talk about rosters, let's talk about teams. So update to the roster as of this point, Jonathan Osorio didn't make the trip, which means, if you guys watched our reaction video, we're down to 4 midfielders. Stephen Eustachio, Marc-Anthony Kaye, Ismail Kone, and Sam Piet. What does that mean? With only 4 midfielders, it does leave you a little bit limited, and I think that's definitely going to impact how Herman goes to the games. It does limit what you can do formation-wise, but also opens the door for some creativity. I think one of the first things we can look at is what does that mean in terms of formations. Clearly, this screams 3-4-3 or a 4-4-2, which would make sense on the surface. I do think they still have the players play a 4-2-3-1, which means they should also still have players to play a 3-5-2. And what could that look like? Because you have limited midfielders, you're probably only going to pair off and try to, rotate, get some players through. But I think you can get away with it, especially when you look at your forward. I want to focus on 3 forwards in particular. Theo Corbinu, Jonathan David, and Junior Hoylett. I think those 3 forward/wingers have also played a little bit of attacking midfield. Yes, we know we look at Theo as a winger right now, who has played as a 9 at Wolves Academy. Hoylett has been a winger, but can play and cut inside and be comfortable coming up. He's usually the break glass in case of emergency forward. And Jonathan David, though he is our striker, we look at him as a striker of the future, I do think his future may be as a 10 in this wave of football how we're playing, where he's a second striker, the way he drops back. So I think those 3 could be interesting options to play in that 10 role. So I want you to keep that in mind for that. But in terms of what you would do, we have the Qatar game on Friday and then on Tuesday Uruguay. Just with how it is, I didn't mention this in a pod that I did, or looking at the roster, how we would do. I'll send like that lower. I would go for this Qatar game, I would start off with a 3-4-3. And this is where I'll get a little bit creative and also say I'd start Dane St. Clair. It has nothing to do with a lack of faith in Maxime Crépeau, but I think Dane has definitely played well enough to deserve a start. We know Maxime is a 1A to Milan's. I'd feel comfortable if Milan went injured as Maxime is a capable keeper, but I think the season that Dane St. Clair's had definitely deserves a shout. And the first game, he definitely deserves. I think that'd be the perfect place to put him. I don't know if Uruguay's the best time to test him, but maybe a Qatar. If there was a 3rd place game at the Gold Cup, which they didn't have, that would have been the matchup, and I would have said that would have been the perfect place to play Dane St. Clair. Let him play in the 3rd place game against Qatar and see how he holds up. So I'm giving him that game. So back 3 are really back 3 and then middle 2. I'm running with the Montreal boy. Yes, I'm going Kamal Miller on the left center back. I'm going Joel Waterman as a central, and then I'm going Alistair Johnson as the right center back. In front of that, I'm putting Ismail Kone as your 8 to 10 ranging up, and then I'm also putting Sam Piet as that 6. You're gonna need a Sam because Alistair, with his right back tendencies, is going to inch. He's going to want to be involved in the action. He's like that late arriving to the play defenseman in the hockey pitch. I said the hockey pitch, whatever, you know what I mean, on the hockey rink. Again, we're talking Canadians, guys. When I get the Ghanaians, we'll be like on the pitch. But I think this would be a good start 5. We're not trying to reward players. They've all had good seasons, but in terms of cohesiveness, I think that might be your best bet. And then plus to leave on in terms of substitutes, I'd have Derek Cornelius ready to come in if need be. That's what I would do. I would go with Cornelius if need be. So he would be that first center back off the pitch. Maybe if you want to save Johnson for the next game, or if Waterman seems a little bit overwhelmed, you have him to go through. You can save Vittoria, you can save Kennedy, and then you either save Miller, take him out early, whatever. But put in Derek Cornelius, maybe 60th minute, just to see how that now looks. Midfield, you only have 2 subs options, so if they could go the full 90, that would be great. Not ideal, but I would say probably, again, 60th minute, possibly, depending on what they agree on for substitution times. That would be where I would go. Now, on the wing, since I'm going 3-4-3, for defenders, we have 2 very interesting conversations. Right? Alfonso Davies is listed as a defender, so I'm going to treat him as such. And the question will be, do you put him in this match or do you save him for Uruguay? I don't think there's a wrong answer, especially when you see also up on the forwards, you don't have Tejan. Tejan is just coming off of an injury, so we're not sure what his match fitness will be. Maybe you put Tejan in a little bit later on into the matchup and you go from there. But on the left, I'd say we start with Sam Adekugbe, and then if things are going well, let him run, but then get Davies in just to give you a little bit more jump at the end of the match. So again, I'm thinking like 40 to 60 minutes for this. I think if you have to make changes depending on how the game's going, how the flow is going, you do that. And then on the right side, this is where it becomes very interesting. The only option you do have here is technically Richie Laryea. That is the only option you technically have, because you're starting Johnston as that right center back, and if you're starting him in the right center back, he's also your only other depth piece. Now Laryea is a player who we've seen him go full 90s off of only trainings for full windows. So to say that I'm not worried about his match fitness is essentially what I'm saying, let's be real. So I would have Laryea there, but then also knowing that if we need to go back to Johnston, how he defends, you can have him manage his minutes that way so he could be available. Either one of them can be available for the Uruguay matchup. So again, Sinclair in goal, back three of Miller, Kamal Miller, Joel Waterman, and Alistair Johnston. Middle three of Sam Adekugbe, Ishmael Kone, Sam Piet, and Richie Laryea. Now, when we get to the top, this is where we really need to start asking ourselves how we want to go. Now, in our roster breakdown, I did mention there's a lot of wingers here. There are a lot of wingers. So, playing with two wingers, whether that be in a 4-4-2 or a 3-4-3, or if they're really bold, a 4-2-3-1, you can't get away with that. I think based off how the players are playing, there's a couple names you can go here, but for myself, I'd like to see, I know his form has dipped a little bit, I'd like to see Liam Miller get the start as that left winger. I think if we can somehow, maybe this will be the window where we finally unlock Basil Liam Miller for CANMNT Liam Miller. I think if you're able to do that, it really does open the door for him and the possibilities that he can. But the problem with a player like him is that he is essentially a winger. He's one of the few only winger players. So if you're not playing a 4-4-2, if you're not playing a 4-2-3-1, or even a 3-4-3, he's not going to be a wingback. That's not his skill set. So because of that, I think that is where you want to put him. Now, because you do have a little bit of flexibility, this is where I get a little creative. On the right side, I go and put Theo Corbian. However, Theo, yo, if you want to like holler at me, tell me how to say it. I'm sure there's a video out there that says it, but you know, send me a DM, let me know. But like, I think a front two with Miller, Liam, and Theo, based off how they're playing, would be good to see. And then up top, I think we have to make a decision here, and I'm gonna make this decision. With this, I start off with Kyle. The reason why I start off with Kyle Larin is because I want to get into a little bit of what I want to do for this second game as well. So a front three of Miller, Larin, and Corbianu. And then I'm looking specifically at Charles Andreas Brim, as well as Luca Koleosho. I want to see those two as potential options to either come in off the bench, give a little bit of spark. Charles has played forward before. You also do have Lucas Cavallini if you need to use him, depending on how the flow of the game is going. But for myself, that's what I'm aiming for. So again, against Qatar, I'm going Dane St. Clair in goal, the Montreal boys, Kamal Miller, Joel Waterman, Alistair Johnston. In the midfield, I'm going Sam Adekugbe, I'm going Ishmael Kone, I'm going Sam Piet, and I'm going Richie Laryea. Up top, I'm going Liam Miller, Kyle Larin, as well as Theo Corbeanu. And players I want to see Cornelius get in maybe at the 60th minute. I also, midfielders, however you want to play that, you can play it. You have the option of either putting Mark Anthony K or Stephen Eustachio. K is also starting to come back from injury as well, so managing his minutes wouldn't be a bad idea. But you can also use maybe in a pinch Junior Hoylett. But then also up top, I want to see Brim as well as Koleosho as the options. I think that would be the ideal in terms of seeing what we can do with that. Now, when we get to Uruguay is where it gets interesting. Uruguay, you want to test your team. We're making a couple assumptions. We're assuming that by this point, there's no guarantee of this, but we're going to work under the notion that Tejan is available. And in this game, I want to see the idea. The smart idea is to play a 4 or a 3-4, another a 3-5-2 here. Now, when you're talking about the original, like a simple thing as in a 3-5-2, Milan and net, a back three of, I'd go Kennedy, Miller, and Victoria. On the wings, you have Tejan and Alfonso Davies. In the midfield, you go Eustachio. Probably you put Piet here in this game again, just to test fitness. But in creatively, you put Hoylett in the midfield along with Mark Anthony K and Eustachio. So you go Mark Anthony K, Eustachio, and Hoylett. And then up top, you have David and Larin. That would be what I'd expect Herbert to do. But this is not Herbert. This is me. So I do what I want to do. And what I think is, I think the creative thing is the 4-2-3-1. And it's a 4-2-3-1 with Ugbo at the top, Davies, David, and Buchanan up top with your, so those are your 4 up top. A midfield of Mac, Mark Anthony Kane, Stephen Eustachio. And then, again, now we're getting real creative here. Getting really creative here. But then a back 3 of, depending on match fitness, you don't have options, you have to run players more. But I'd say if you do sub off Adekubi and let Davies get some run in that Qatar game, you put Adekubi in as your left back, you go Victoria and Kamal Miller, and you have Kennedy as that next center back coming in, and then on the right you have Johnston. You're just moving Johnson over, and then you have Milan Boran. The reasons for both lineups. When it comes to game 1, we're trying to get through, but we also want to work on some things. But it's the last chance to see players, and I think for a player like Waterman, you have to see him for extended periods of time. And I think a matchup against Qatar is your best chance to do. Or we could baptism by fire and let him play against Uruguay and see how he defends, you know, Martinez, how he defends all the Uruguayan players coming at you. So, you know, duck and cover. Midfield, I don't know if a game against, we saw Kone against Costa Rica, and definitely teams that absorb, he'll have the space to try to create and to progress that way. And I think not that Costa Rica plays like Qatar, but Qatar will welcome that pressure and try to soak it and counter. At the Gold Cup, they were very efficient with that countering. So, but that means they'll let you have the ball. So Kone is a little bit safer in that type of a game. Sam Piet, I mean, we forget to appreciate this man enough. But for that first game, I want to see some of those youth players. We need to see what they can do in these type of lineups. So a 3-4-3 against probably more than likely like a 5-3-2 or a 5-4-1 that Qatar will play just to soak in, I think gives you enough cover and you can go from there. It's not the worst idea in the world. And I think that gives Herms the opportunity to see some of these players on the pitch live in game situations. When you get to game 2, we need to give Ugbo an actual start and an actual run. And Cavallini is probably your first forward off the bench in terms of strikers. If it's not working for Ugbo, which isn't a terrible, you've seen that pairing work well at the Gold Cup back in 19. And then Tejan, David, and Davies, I think that is something that may be the future that we're not really seeing, but may be it. I think as he progresses, as much as Jonathan David is probably our 9 in the striker, I think he may be suited in today's game to be more of a 10. Of not necessarily the creative midfielder, but the second striker role. How do we get him onto the pitch? Well, we make him up 10, and that way he can drift up and be that second striker. So you're playing more of a 4-2-2-1-1 essentially, or a 4-4-1-1. So I think that would be the idea that you go with. So again, you guys let me know what you think. So for Qatar, I have Dane Sinclair in gold. I have the Montreal boys, so that's Kamal Miller, Joel Waterman, Alistair Johnston. In the midfield, I have Sam Adekubi, I have Ishmael Kone, Sam Piet, and Richie Larea. Up top, I have Liam Miller, Kyle Laren, as well as Theo Corbeanu. Theo can drift in and be that second striker if need be, and how his play dictates. Are both of those players on the wing trying to break down, getting balls, and Kyle Laren just getting himself in the position. Against Uruguay, I'm going 4-2-3-1. I'm going Milan Borjan in net. I'm going Adekubi again in the middle, because if you want to drift up, you can shift the last three into a back three. I'm going Miller, Victoria, and then Johnston. Let Larea have a little bit of a rest there. And if Adekubi shifts up, you can always shift that back four into a back three and you're good. In the midfield, of course, Stefan Eustachio as well as Mark Anthony Kaye. Top four, up top you have Ike Ugbo, and then underneath him you have Davies, David. Underneath him you have Davies, David, and Tejan Buchanan, assuming he's healthy. Guys, let me know what you think. Let's talk about this.